So let's talk about a serious subject for a moment, right? Because I guess this is what I get paid for. This is why you guys come to me to learn about being a geek in the real world. So I guess I have to do my job sometimes. No, it's not all about TCP/IP and MCSAs and all that kind of stuff. So I want to talk today about depression in the world of geekdom and how to deal with depression as a geek and why this is important. I'm personally dealing with this right now, and that's why I figured I would do this video, because basically the spaghetti monster has been kicking me nuts for years. It is like, it really, like, there is a certain point where you get to, and you're like, this has to be a damn joke. Like, seriously, this has to be a damn joke. Not this many things should be able to go wrong in this amount of time. And I was talking to my wife about that yesterday or the day before. And, it's one of those things that hits you as you're sitting there and you're talking about stuff and you've got stress and you've got this and you've got that. And then sometimes, like, I listen to the words that I say. You listen to the things that come out of your mouth. And so one of the things I realized is things have gone a little bad is when I told my wife that I feel profoundly tired. I was trying to find the words to explain it to her. Because again, whenever you have a spouse, whenever one of the big issues is communication. And so, saying that you're tired, they tuck you into bed, they give you some more milk, and away you go. But you have to figure out a way, like, how do you explain exactly what you're going through? And I looked at her and I said, I just feel profoundly tired. There's just a tiredness that is just exhausted. I don't even know how to explain it. It's not a tiredness where you go to sleep. It's just this tiredness where just nothing seems to get done. Like I have this video for Simply Cam. So Simply Cam, I will do the video today, damn it, because I need to do some fucking work. But there's a product called Simply Cam that one of these companies sent me, and it's really cool. It's like this cloud-based surveillance system or surveillance camera, notifications, all kinds of awesome stuff. Really kind of easy. It's one of those nice classes that I do where really, really high-tech cool stuff that is pretty simple to use. So basically it's just a slam dunk class to do. I get the product, I play with the product, I do a video, next. Yeah, and so that was the plan on Friday, right? So that was the plan last Friday. I was going to do the video, definitely, absolutely, no questions asked. That video is going to be done Friday, and it's now Wednesday, and really, if I have my druthers, I probably wouldn't even get around to it today, but I do actually have to do some work, and so it will get done. And so that is the thing that harms us in the IT world with depression. And this is one of the things that you guys have to be thinking about, and why mental health is so important to IT professionals. Because what you have to understand about IT professionals is in Geeks and all that, is we are not like normal employees. We really aren't. I make all these jokes about florists and marketing people and all that, and it's really not a joke. I mean, I'm flippant about it, but it's really not a joke. Is most employees in a company, or most employees in any kind of institution, their individual actions really don't matter a whole lot. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm just saying that as a bit of point of fact. Having been an employer, the reality is for a lot of different positions in a company, you hire multiple of those particular folks so that if one of them kind of loses their shit, that the other ones can fill in and do the work, and productivity keeps going. The issue is for us geeks is that our profession doesn't work that way. We really, in many of these companies, really are unique individuals, and so the thing is a lot of tasks fall on our shoulders, and if we fail in our ability to be able to keep up with those tasks, that it has a very outsized ramification for the company. Again, if a secretary kind of loses their crap, I mean, I feel bad. I mean, nothing wrong with secretaries, but it doesn't really matter. They call up the temp company, they get another secretary in 2 days, and, hey, no harm, no foul. If your senior level engineer loses their shit, They have all the passwords. They know how the group policies are set up. They understand how the infrastructure is not just simply built now, but what the plans are for the next 5 years. They understand all the quirks in the infrastructure. Hey, remember that server that some jackass installed a decade ago that actually is in fact still running and doing something useful? And does anybody other than the senior engineer actually know where that server is physically located? No, probably not. And so that's the thing. In the geek world, one of the things you really have to realize, and this is why I hammer this home to you guys about the professionalism in our career, is that when we fail in our job, the company fails in a lot of ways. Again, what we do affects everything, and especially when you go off and you be a consultant, the issue is like I say, for what I do now, is that if you don't get the work done, I get paid for videos being produced. So if I don't produce videos, guess what? I'm not getting paid so much anymore. And so that's one of the things you have to realize is if you start as a geek, if you start having issues with depression, if you start having issues with any of those others mental things, is that we cannot push through this in the same way that other professions can. Construction people, they can push through a massive amount of mental illness. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, they've got to go in, they've got to lay bricks, and away they go. You know, there's a lot of jobs out there that even when they have issues, I mean, they can just power through just because their job isn't revolved around their brain. But what I want you guys to realize with any of these mental disabilities or whatever is that our brain is what we get paid for. So when there is something wrong with our brain, it is the equivalent as if a construction worker broke their arm, right? It's the equivalent of, you know, some, you know, whatever else, you know, the broken arm, something like that, a physical disability. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand is we get paid for this. This is why so many of us, sadly, are our flesh-colored marshmallows, is because, you know, it doesn't matter for the most part what the physique is. It is, can you sit down? Can you think? Can you connect all of these different things? Can you be self-motivated? Because that's the other thing, you know, like with our profession is you have to be self-motivated because nobody knows what the hell we do. Like the CEO wants you to do your job. The CEO has no idea what your job is. No joke. I was at one of the enterprise companies that I worked for back in the day, and there was this guy who went around and he built out the IT infrastructure for the regional offices when the company was exploding. I mean, the company went from like nothing to like 10,000 employees in years, right? And they actually had offices and trucks and all that kind of stuff. The interesting part, so this guy was the guy that went out and actually built the IT infrastructure for the hub offices. No joke. When that guy went to the hospital because he had a problem, he actually had a brain tumor at one point. He went to the hospital. The CEO didn't even know he existed. This was the guy that built out all of the IT infrastructure, literally didn't report to anybody. He had an open checkbook. He had an open line to the travel department. Basically, somebody just kind of gave him the orders to go build out IT infrastructure. And that's what he did. Like the CEO, he didn't report to, it was just like, he was just that part of the, go do that. He was very good at doing that, and so he did. And so that's the thing, like where self-motivation is involved, because things like servers, things like, you know, cleaning up messes, all of that kind of stuff, you need to be able to walk in the morning and go, I am going to do this, and be comfortable doing it. So that is why dealing with things like depression and the rest of this is very, very important, why it's important for me now. Now, one of the things to realize whenever I'm talking about this is depression. Whenever we're dealing with things like depression, there's basically two versions of depression. There's one more clinical. I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me on this. More clinical. Basically, it's things like your blood chemistry is mucked up, right? You know, so basically you were born, some little gland in your head isn't producing enough of whatever it's supposed to, and therefore you are chronically depressed. There's a lot of people out there like that. So what I will tell you is if you're one of these people that's chronically depressed, basically when I say chronically depressed, what I'm saying is you don't really know when the hell it started, and you don't even remember what the trigger event might have been, and you really can't see any exit out of it, you're probably chronically depressed. You need to go see professional help. I've had a lot of friends, I've had a lot of family members that have been chronically whatever depressed, and let me tell you, professional help and medications actually does a lot of good. I know there's a lot of people scared out there, I don't want to take medicines, I will not do this whole pill popping culture. And again, you have to decide where you are in the world. But I have seen a lot of people where they do take the pills and it puts everything back in order, and they feel a lot better for it. So the first thing that I will say is if you are in that whole like chronically whatever thing, go get help. Drugs do work. Then there are people like me, where I guess, like I say, Spaghetti Monster has been kicking me in the nutsack for a year too many at this point. And so there are there are coping mechanisms for this that you can go through in order to try to get things back on track. Again, like I said, I've had a very adventurous, wacky life, so this type of thing has happened a couple of times in the past, and it's one of those things, again, as long as your brain chemistry isn't totally twerked out, you can go through and you can get to the other side if you do particular things. And this is an important thing. Again, this is where I always talk to you guys about you have to take responsibility for your own actions. You have to take responsibility for your own life. So it's things like depression. If you get into a cycle that puts you into depression, there are ways to get out. If you're willing to get out of the cycle, then you can get out of the mental state. If you try to remain in the exact cycle that you're in, then you're not going to get out of the state. It's one thing feeds into the other, feeds into the other, feeds into the other. So the first thing you have to ask yourself is why is it happening? What has sent you to the state that you are in depression or stressful or any of that? Like, why are you here? And this is one of those things that people don't think enough about, right? Whether it's family, whether it's job, whether it's construction projects, whether it's this, whether it's that, whether it's the other thing. One of the things you have to do is why are you here? What is going on? And assess the situation as it is. Now, with a lot of things like this, if you're looking at it, you could have a couple of situations. First situation, maybe it may all simply be one of these very time-specific things. You have family members that died. Therefore, you go through a depressive phase. I mean, like I say, your mom dies, your dad dies, your brother dies. I mean, life sucks. You get depressed. But that there's a specific thing there that has happened. And even though it may take you a month or two or a year to get through it, that you will get through it. You know that there's a specific trigger event. And then past that, you'll be able to get through it. The other thing you have to look at, though, is whether this is going to be you're in a situation that is going to continually create these problems. Things like a bad job, things like places where you live where there are a lot of things like violence and all that kind of stuff, bad marriage, relationship, abuse, anything like that. Basically, are you dealing with depression because a situational event happened, or are you in some kind of situation that is just ongoing, that it will be continuous? And if you're in an event if you're in something that's going to be ongoing, it's going to be continuous, that is where you have to take kind of control of your life and figure out how to get out of it. Again, with a relationship, with a job, with any of that kind of stuff, there is a time that you're going to have to actually make the decision in order to get out, and so then your whole mental cycle can get a lot better. Now, there are other times, like one of the problems that I'm personally going through, where there is just one thing after the other, after the other, after the other. Oh my golly, after the damn other. And so one of the things you also have to be willing to do is what I've had to do with a few things to get everything back in order is press pause. And this is one thing that I find strange that not enough people are willing to do, is simply press pause. Because there's this idea that we have to keep going, that we create agreements and we do this and we do that and we do the other, and this has to happen. So this happened, and then this has to happen, and this has to happen, and this has to happen. I told these people that I was going to do X, Y, or Z. And one of the things you have to look at is it time to just press pause on all those things? So I had a number of things lined up, and I just paused them all. It really did. Like I emailed a few of the whatever the leaders or whatever what it was going on, and just said, hey, you know what? This has no bearing on you. And that's one thing, like whenever you're talking to anybody, always make sure that they know where they stand. And so I emailed and said, hey, this has no bearing on you. I really like you guys. You guys are good, but I just can't deal with any more horse shit right now. I really, really, really can't. And so pause. And they said, well, but we don't, how do you can't pause. And I went, I am. And that's one of the things you have to do. Again, like I say, when you take personal responsibility for your life, is sometimes you have to tell the other side, no, we are not going ahead. I don't care what agreements there have been. At this point, going ahead is most likely going to cause more further issues. So this is going to go on pause for a month or 2 months or 3 months or 5 months or 6 months or whatever else. This is one of the things that you have to be willing to do because, again, especially in the professional environment, one of the issues is you have all this stuff leading up to where you are now. You get into a certain mental state now, and you have all of this stuff going into the future. And the question is if all this stuff in the past got you to where you are now, and basically going into the future is a repeat of everything that you've been going through, then how do you think you're going to get out of where you are by continuing to do exactly what you're doing now? And in life, I mean, in life, one of the issues you have to look at is basically what pain are you willing to deal with, right? So, by continuing on as you are, you have the deal of depression or stress or whatever mental stuff you're dealing with. And if you break the cycle, there's going to be pain. You're going to piss people off. It may cost you money. You may actually have to get out of contracts and that kind of stuff. But that's the question that you have to ask yourself is that, what is better for you? If I can break out of this now, I pay a couple $1,000s here, I piss off a couple people here, but in a few months, everything is back to normal and I can go back and mend relationships. Isn't that better than being at the place you are now and then just continuing on the cycle until you kind of lose your mind and everything blows up and then it gets really bad? One of those little things to think about. Then the final thing to think about, just if you're dealing with any of this stuff, is accept the damage done. And that's one thing a lot of people don't allow themselves and can be damaging unto itself. Is one of the biggest problems, especially in the American society, is we like to beat ourselves up. We love to beat ourselves up. Hey, who needs an enemy when we got ourselves, right? And so unfortunately with a lot of these things, people get into this cycle of depression or whatever, and then not only are they dealing with the depression, not only are they dealing with the stress, not only are they dealing with how to break out of the cycle, but then they start fixating on the damage done. Again, they start fixating on, I pissed off this people. They start fixating on, basically, this money got thrown down the toilet. They start fixating on the damage that's been done, and then that only kind of sends you more into the cycle. And so what you need to accept is basically you got into this point, somehow, however it happened. The damage has been done. Again, let it go, move on. When you're feeling better, try to swing back around and see if you can mend relationships and all that kind of stuff, but simply accept what has happened for it actually happening. So those are some of the things to be thinking about, like I say, with depression in the tech field and geek, because we deal with this a lot. Again, our profession, not only is our profession different than a lot of professions for the fact that we really are more important to our companies, to our organizations than most employees, but we also interact with our profession in a vastly different way than most other employees. Because, I mean, like, if you look at most geeks, like when I had my employees, it was nothing for an employee to work an 8 or 10 hour day and then they would go home and they would work 6 hours on building some server to see if some experiment would work, right? Especially with geeks, our personal lives and our professional lives mesh fundamentally in a way that most other people professions don't. And so all of these things, like our emotional state, our mental state, all those things affect us in the professional way much differently than, like I say, in a lot of the employees. So we are we look at our job titles and we put more emphasis on them than a lot of other people do. Being a senior engineer versus a help desk person, we we attach to that, and how we interact both personally and professionally really has a big ramification, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's some thoughts there. Personally, me, I've put a lot of things on hold. This is, like I say, a lot of stuff. So my personal thing, again, like I say, I've put a lot of things on hold. Got kicked in the nuts for a couple of stuff. I'm gonna go off and do a little bit of traveling, figure out some things on the business front, then come back, get back to it, and go from there. Just what you have to look at with all this stuff, like whatever you're dealing with in life, emotionally or whatever, is what I would argue is you have to try to find a plan for how you're going to get out of it. There's no harm, no foul with getting into the position, right? There's no harm, there's no foul. Okay, you get to the position that you are, the damage has been done. But the question that I would ask is, how are you going to get out of this? What is your plan to deal with the current situation? Because if you have a plan to deal with the current situation, I'm not saying the first plan is going to work. But if you have a plan and then you work the plan, then you can modify the plan so that at some point you get out of the situation. Whereas what I see with a lot of people, they kind of just put their heads in the sand and they somehow think like magical thinking. Like, if I do exactly the same thing that I did today, tomorrow, maybe miraculously something will change. In reality, that doesn't work. I don't know. And then you just keep spinning in that cycle, and everything gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse again. And that's one of the issues that I see with a lot of the viewers out there, is that they get into these depressive cycles. And if you don't get yourself out of the depressive cycle, then it just gets worse and worse and worse. And then people don't want to deal with you. Again, remember, in our profession is so much about relationships. You think when you go into IT, you think when you go into technology, again, it's about servers and cabling and virtualization and all that. But it is so much about relationships. 50% of our job is about relationships. It's about dealing with other people. And so if you're getting aggressive, if you're getting angry, if you're getting snarky, and especially you don't know why, it's one thing if you're trying to be snarky at that individual, but once you start getting into that place where you're just being unpleasant to be around, the issue is that is going to start dramatically affecting what happens to you, whether you get promotions, whether you get fired, whether you get laid off, all of that kind of stuff, because people don't want to deal with that type of thing, right? So a lot of people think, hey, I'm here, I know how to fix a server, I know how to run cable, that's all that matters. It's like, no, it's not. If people don't like you, your life is going to suck regardless. And so something to think about. So there you go. Again, the entire point of this vlog channel is to try to tell you guys about the real world of technology. And again, this is the real world, and it sucks. But I'll move on. Like I say, it's the highs, the lows, and that's one thing you have to realize with the tech profession, right? Is everybody focuses on the highs. With our profession, it's all about when you make $10,000 for an hour's worth of work. It's all about when you come up with the most amazing idea that just blows everybody's mind. It's about when you launch a startup company that takes over the world, right? Everybody in our field focuses on that pinnacle, that when you're riding the wave. Nobody ever wants to talk about when the wave crushes you. You know what I'm saying? Everybody wants to focus on that pinnacle, that point of perfection, when everything just seems silky smooth and amazing. They don't want to talk about how you got to that place where you got rolled by 20 waves before you could find the wave that you could actually ride, or when you come off of that wave and you get on the next wave and it flips you over and you break a bone or something. Nobody ever wants to talk about that. They always want to focus on when you're at the pinnacle. But with our profession, it's highs and it's lows. It's no big deal. It's no big deal one way or the other. You just have to make sure that when you're going through the lows, you know why you're going through the lows. You know what your plan is to get out of the lows, and you just go from there. So yeah, I don't know. Not much more to say on that. Oh, spaghetti monster, please. I'm just asking. can I have a couple of months? All I'm asking, just a couple of months of peace and quiet would be so nice.